Hey everyone, Steve Monette here with another video in my Bible Prophecy Bite series where we look at Bible scripture, history, and current events that all point to the soon return of Jesus the Messiah. Okay, so for today's video, let's talk about the U.S. elections and Bible prophecy. And unless you've been in a cave for the past few days, you know that the November 2020 presidential elections here in the USA has been a very wild and crazy time and shows absolutely no signs of letting up anytime soon. But many people at this time are depressed by the end result, and others are giddy with excitement. It all depends on your political viewpoints. But today I want to talk specifically about the outcomes of this election and how it dovetails with Bible prophecy. So let me apologize in advance for the length of this video. This is going to be probably longer than what I normally am accustomed to, but there's a lot here to cover. But I do promise to be very brief and as brief as possible. So, while I am obviously, my flesh is saddened and frustrated by the most recent vote counts, and in some cases infuriated with the fraud that's being exposed every day, my spirit is very clear in telling me that all of this must happen. I love this country and the freedoms it allows and the righteousness that we once stood for. But at the end of the day, this place is not our home. And in order to get to our permanent home, Bible prophecy must come to pass. And make no mistake about it, it is coming to pass at a very high rate of speed. So without further delay, let's get into some specific examples, okay? So first I want to talk about the domestic implications of this election, and then I'll talk about the international implications and how both will dovetail into Bible prophecy. So just to give you a quick rundown, here's a quick list of what I found just in the past few hours of what voters actually approved of in this country, just in this past election of November 2020. In Oregon, measure number 110 was passed by the voters, which now allows people to possess small amounts of cocaine, heroin, oxycodone, and methamphetamines without fear of penalty. So in short, hard drugs have now been decriminalized. In Colorado, Proposition 115 was passed by the voters, which allows abortion beyond the 22-week mark. So essentially that is third term trimester abortion. In Delaware, Vermont, Colorado, and Kansas, the voters there just elected their first transgender person to public office. In Georgia, the voters there just elected a self-admitted lesbian who is also an ordained Episcopal priest. And this person was elected into office by a 75 to 25% margin. And according to the latest vote count, it looks like that the voters of the USA might have voted into office a president that approves of third trimester abortion, approves of the LGBT agenda, does not support Israel, but rather supports the enemies of Israel, which are Iran and the Palestinians. Now, if you are what many polls say is approximately 12% of evangelical Christians who voted for the presidential candidate that supports all of these things, you are an accomplice to all of these things. So that essentially means that you are for third trimester abortion, approval of the LGBTA agenda, and you are against Israel. I mean, just because you're in the car when your buddy robs a bank does not mean that you're innocent. You are an accomplice to those things. And if you are for those things that I just mentioned, then you are against the things of God. Those are not my words, but they are the words of the Bible. For God is clearly against all of those things. And if you want to go against God, be my guest. That's your choice. Best of luck to you on that one. Okay? Oh, yeah. I almost forgot this one. Take a look at this headline. In Washington, D.C., a protester on November 4th, day after the elections, was videotaped screaming at a street preacher that she was going to take the pages of his Bible and wipe her genitalia during her time of menstruation. Think about that. Of course, I'm doing my very best to use medically correct terminology, well, because I am a medical professional. So all of these voter results begs the question, does this sound like a nation that is sorry or repentant of her sins? Of course not. So for those of you that are praying for the Lord to bless this nation and to make it prosperous again, you have to face the hard truth. God cannot bless a country that actively promotes and encourages sinful behavior as defined in the Bible. He just cannot bless a nation that goes against the things of him. 2 Chronicles 7:14 clearly states the following: If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray, and seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, and will forgive their sin, and heal their land. So I ask you, has this nation turned from its wicked ways? Has this nation humbled themselves before the Lord? Are a majority of the people seeking the face of the Lord? If you answered no to these questions, then you cannot possibly expect God to heal the land and make it prosperous again, can you? Of course not. All right, so let's talk very briefly about voter fraud. Now, the President of the United States went on national television on November 5th in saying that he had proof of voter fraud in multiple states. This fraud, he implied, was enough to swing the election against him. I am not going to debate the details of these fraud claims, even though there is some evidence of fraud being committed. This has nothing to do with Bible prophecy and me arguing those claims. But make no mistake, we do have evidence of dead people voting. We have evidence of late ballots being backdated by employees of the U.S. Postal Service. We have evidence of voter rolls being altered after Election Day. And we even have evidence of a state's Department of Motor Vehicles Bureau fast-tracking voter IDs after the election. But in perhaps the most obvious of all frauds, we have poll workers in Michigan and in Pennsylvania that are refusing to allow observers in their room while they count their votes. And they are even hiding behind paper sheets taped to windows to hide their counting duties. So how does this fit into Bible prophecy? Well, it is fraud and it is deceit. And the simple answer is this. Remember that the Bible tells us in several verses that Satan is the father of all lies. And fraud is a lie no matter how you slice it. And in 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 1, we are told that in the latter times many will fall from the faith and pay attention to deceitful spirits and doctrine of demons. And in 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 3 through 4, tells us that many will turn away from the truth and follow myths. And the word myths is defined in Strong's as a false narrative or a fable, which is exactly what's happening today. So make no mistake, brothers and sisters, darkness and deceit are covering the land right now, and most people don't even realize it. But the real message is this. All of this must happen because the Bible tells us that it must. All right, so let's move on to the international implications. I could talk about this for hours, but I'm hoping to condense this into 5 minutes or less. We know full well that Joe Biden is no fan of Israel. I don't care what he says. We know this because of his actions while in office with Obama. There is far too much evidence to cover in this video that shows Biden and Obama had a disdain for Israel. That is not conjecture, that is pure fact. And in this recent headline, Biden has come out publicly and stated that he will befriend Israel's archenemy, which is Iran, otherwise known in the Bible as Persia. And Biden has stated that he will essentially breathe life back into Iran by lifting all sanctions against them, which will essentially reinvigorate their economy. Yeah, so this headline also proves that Biden has stated he will re-engage the Palestinians, another of Israel's enemies. So this is just all amazing stuff, people. But how does this fit into Bible prophecy? Again, this is very simple. What Trump did and what Biden has said he will do all lead to the Gog and Magog war. And let me explain. You see, Trump has negotiated peace with Israel and the UAE and Bahrain. The peace between these two specific countries is required for the Gog and Magog war to begin. And we find that in Ezekiel 38 and, of course, 39, when Ezekiel talks about Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish, and how they take a neutral position when Gog attacks Israel. Make no mistake, no Muslim nation will come to the defense of Israel. I don't care how much of an ally they proclaim they are. No Muslim nation will come to the defense of Israel. And further, no Muslim nation will fight another Muslim nation over Israel. The UAE, nor Bahrain, nor any other Middle Eastern Muslim country will stop Iran or Turkey when they attack Israel. It is that simple. And as I've said on this channel for probably about 2 years now almost, the Bible is clear that no country will come to the aid of Israel when Magog and Gog attack her. That means the USA, Israel's current staunch ally, must be neutralized in some way or another. I have said that this could happen as a result of the rapture of the church, and I've also said that it could happen because the USA has been neutralized politically in some way or another. And after this election in the past few days, I'm beginning to think we have our answer. You see, if Joe Biden is elected, and it looks like it may happen, he will empower Persia or Iran, which of course is no friend of Israel. And it is very unlikely that Mr. Biden will lift a finger to even help Israel if they were attacked. He, as I expect, would take a neutral position as well. And that equates to the USA being neutralized politically. So I think that pretty much gives us our answer. But we'll see. As of today, November 6, 2020, Turkey is moving farther into Syria with an impending attack on Idlib. Iran or Persia is 80 miles from Israel's border today. And Turkey has all but moved out of the NATO alliance, of which the USA was and is a part of. So there it is, boys and girls. Israel is at peace with most of her neighbors. Israel is prosperous beyond their wildest dreams. Israel has very large reserves of gas, natural gas right now, located just off their coast. And there are no walled cities in Israel today, just as Ezekiel 38 predicts. Gog and Magog are essentially revving up their engines. And the Gog and Magog attack on Israel is what triggers the day of the Lord. And we read that in Ezekiel 38. And the day of the Lord is described in 22 different verses throughout the Bible, and every single verse describes it in the same way and in the same detail as Ezekiel 38. And the day of the Lord is exactly what Jesus describes in Matthew 24 at the rapture of the church, and it is exactly what Paul describes in 1 Thessalonians 5:2 at the rapture of the church as well. And in Revelation, the trumpets and the bowl judgments are identical to Ezekiel 38 and 39, where God describes his wrath and the actions that he will take. So it all fits together perfectly, boys and girls. It really does. And in my mind, it really doesn't get any clearer than that. That if Joe Biden does win this election, We are on the final mile of this journey. So don't be depressed. I know it's an easy statement to make. As my mother used to say, easier said than done. But at the end of the day, this all must happen, and it all leads to one thing. That is the rapture of the church. So, stay close to the Lord, follow what He has planned for your life, and execute on it to the best of your ability. Needless to say, the time to accept Jesus Christ and receive eternal life is coming to a close very shortly. Don't miss this opportunity to secure your place in heaven. But in the meantime, keep looking up, for our redemption draws near. Thanks for watching.